Hello, everybody. Welcome to day 5 of the Will Menaker strike. Will has convinced Virgil and Amber to join the strike with him. They're currently rallying outside my apartment. We don't know how much longer we can survive without guidance forward, but we're also not going to start paying him, though. Like, that's ridiculous, right?
No money, no. Even if it means we have to sit in this pigsty for the rest of our lives, slowly starving to death, surviving on nothing but LaCroix and Slim Jims.
Yeah, Will has gotten enough exposure from the show, and if he can't figure out how to survive on that, then that's honestly his
seriously.
problem.
I mean, it's called hustle. Look into it.
One thing we're not going to do is turn on each other. We're not going to call my beautiful apartment that I cleaned especially for you a sty. We're not going to be doing that. We're not going to be commenting on how I have a very long coffee table for a TV stand. You're not going to talk about how I didn't bring over my sword stand from my last apartment. You're not going to criticize me for any of the things that are like in weird places because it's clean. You could eat off this floor.
Oh, absolutely.
And I do. But helping us get through this strike until we finally break Will's will.
Yeah.
The will of Will Menaker.
The breaking of the will.
This is not going to be the triumph of the will. You feel me?
No, not at all. The opposite of that.
I'm on my Lenny Riefenstahl shit. Defeat of the will.
But we don't need him.
Railing on your bitch. I'm in Munich. God's plan.
And we don't need him.
Helping us is Derek Davison.
Mm-hmm.
Derek, thank you for standing up to these union thugs with us.
Thank you for crossing the picket line.
I can't, I'm nothing if I'm not a scab, so I'm happy to do this.
Yes.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Bless the scab.
I come with breaking news, actually.
Ooh. See, this is why this is already working out. Let's hear it.
Breaking.
So
Boom.
I just saw this. Michael Flynn was supposed to do a campaign appearance. Our old friend Michael Flynn was supposed to do a campaign appearance for some Senate candidate in Montana, and he had to cancel it, citing a family emergency. So I can only imagine that Michael Flynn Jr. must have like his fingers caught in a Chinese finger trap.
Oh, yeah, Michael.
And they have to bring in the National Guard or whatever to get him out of there.
Michael, damn it. He wanted to do a secret meeting with President Xi so that he could make a sweetheart deal to flee to China, and he actually tried to dig there. He's stuck in a pit in their backyard. He can't climb out.
I don't think this is. I know we'd have our problems with Michael Flynn and his son Colonel Flynn, but it's serious. Look, there are millions of families who endure the hardship of their 36-year-old son thinking that somebody took their nose and experiencing psychosis, constantly passing out because they forgot how to breathe, because they think that they don't have a nose.
Yeah, I mean, who amongst us has not had our large adult boy who prides himself on his being the son of an army man, never having done it himself, going to have a fun rabbit hunt in his backyard and putting his shotgun barrel into a tree hole, and then the barrel comes out of a higher hole in the tree and shoots him in the face.
Do you think it's fun? Are you so partisan now? Are you so far gone in these politics, the politics of hate, that you think it's funny when a particularly clever rabbit puts a hunter's own image saying what season it is to hunt, and he shoots himself because he thinks it's open season on himself?
That's not a laughing matter at all.
It's not.
It's not funny that he was chasing the Comet Ping Pong Pizza child molester, and Tony Podesta painted a tunnel on the side of a mountain and pretended to run down it, and Michael Flynn Jr. ran smack into the mountain and busted his face wide open.
You gonna tell me that a man who is going away from a lucrative campaign appearance to peel his son off of the side of a mountain, roll him up in a tube, and take him home, that's not devotion and parental love? You're a cynical piece of shit.
Do you think it's okay? Do you think it's just something you just walk off when you receive a contract to capture every money of Qatar's ruling family, and you walk through every single one of the traps from Home Alone's 1, 2, and 3? You know what? Yeah, okay, maybe Colonel Flynn, General Flynn Jr., whatever you want to call him, maybe he didn't see those movies because he couldn't get around the parental lock his dad put on him. For some reason, it's a parental block on PG movies. But yeah, okay. Hindsight is 2020. I'd like to, if anyone's a perfect parent, I'd love to hear from them.
Look, he who has not tried to capture Fethullah Gulen and seen the traitor dressed as a sexy lady and then gotten so excited that his eyes jumped out of his head and then wrapped around the stalks and exploded, cast the first stone.
So, guys, we're doing prayers up.
Prayers up for the Flynns, guys.
Yeah, prayers up.
Everyone's favorite family.
Let's do a love bomb. You know, a lot of hate bombs in this world, a lot of MOABs. Let's all at the same time pray for little Mike.
Pray for those precious boys.
Yes.
So that's one hilarious. Thank you for that. I hadn't heard that. That's very funny, and yeah, really.
You're welcome. I'm happy to contribute to the.
Yeah, I'll be
product
thinking about that
producing.
for frankly all day now.
I love that he was going to a campaign stop, and it's like, oh man, our internal polling shows this is tighter than we thought. Can we get the guy who's been fired twice for like the same reason in 3 years?
Can we get the ridiculous oaf whose comical and obvious corruption was the triggering mechanism to lead to Trump's entire administration being embroiled in a nonstop scandal? Let's get that guy. But they love him because he's loyal, and that's all that matters. And Trump loves him.
Trump wants to bring him back.
Exactly, and I really hope it happens after his term is vindicated by sweeping midterm victories. I'm hoping that he brings him back in as Attorney General after he fires Jeff Sessions out of a cannon. A Civil War cannon, of course.
Bring back him. Bring back Paul Manafort.
Oh, God, yeah.
Bring back, who's the...
Lewandowski.
Yeah, Lewandowski.
Yes.
Suicide Squad. Trump campaign Suicide Squad.
Hell yeah.
Bannon. Lewandowski. Fucking
Yes.
Michael Flynn and his son that are
Hope
a package
Hicks.
deal.
Oh, that's Harley Quinn right there.
Yeah.
Hope
Oh,
Hicks.
my God. Yeah.
No question.
Oh, my God. Lewandowski's the Joker. He entranced her with his butterfly knife tricks.
Yep. Manafort is definitely dead shot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And who? Papadopoulos?
Captain Boomerang, obviously.
Yes, dies at the beginning of the movie for a stupid reason.
Speaking of comical oafs of the Trump administration, Derek, from what I've seen, a lot of them right now or very recently were in Washington, D.C. For some sort of summit/rally to overthrow the Iranian government and push President Trump to renege on the nuclear deal. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so this was the Iran Freedom Convention for Democracy and Human Rights.
Sounds good. I love all of those things.
It was held on Saturday in a hotel, I guess, in was it in D.C.? It must have been.
I think it was in D.C., yeah.
And yeah, I mean, the big splashy speech, I guess, came from Rudy Giuliani.
On the cusp of just a great week for him. Capping off just media superstar.
When he's not outing all of Trump's crimes over his career, still has time to sweep up some cash from the anti-Iran lobby.
Yeah, from what I understand, he mimed tearing up a piece of paper.
Yes, he said, he told the crowd, what do you think is going to happen to the nuclear deal, and took a piece of paper and pretended to rip it apart.
Couldn't even actually rip a piece of paper? Good God.
No,
man.
maybe it was like that Proud Boy with the sign. Did you guys see that on Twitter? They couldn't rip the sign in half.
We talked
it was
about
like that.
Please stop writing my notes on the corrugated paper. I can't bear it. It's ridiculous.
I like how supposedly intelligent you guys are, but you're so literal minded. That was a metaphor for him struggling against the nefarious deep state.
I'm just assuming it's the gout catching up to him.
Yeah, Rudy Giuliani has diseases that were wiped out, supposedly wiped out 400 years ago when one guy was like, maybe we should stop hurling our dead bodies into our drinking water reservoir.
No,
Rudy Giuliani gets diseases you can only get by going on a wooden sailboat and traversing around the world.
Yeah, he's got linguini neck, rigatoni testicles.
Sir, it's very serious. You have stage 4 gabagool lung. I thought this was America. Oh, my God. How did we never put this together? Rudy Giuliani is Charlie Feynman from Reign Over Me. He
Oh, my
talks
God.
Like him. He
Well, we
talks
talked
like
about
him,
that,
yeah.
and we talked about how that movie is really about 9/11 and his his need to remember it, and nobody remembers 9/11 more than Rudy Giuliani.
His speech at the RNC in 2016 was like, they're like, Barack Obama's president. He's like, what the fuck are you talking about?
What do you mean? I don't want them Kenyan to be president.
Right.
So that was the highlight, obviously, but I think there were a number of other heavy hitters in the Trump administration there who were hooting and hollering with the other people. Now, who exactly put together this little clan bake, and what is the agenda of them, and what is their influence in Washington?
So the conference was organized ostensibly to support the protesters, the Iranian protesters from back in December who have been seized upon by Iranian exile groups in D.C., like, a hungry person would seize on a Big Mac.
Really on the ball there.
Yeah.
Only a 5-month delay.
This conference was organized by a group called Mujahideen-e-Khalq, or the People's Mujahideen of Iran. And they are a very old, they were founded in the 1960s, resistance group that has no actual support inside Iran, but nevertheless has convinced through massive amounts of spending on lobbyists, has convinced Washington that they are a government in waiting for the inevitable day when the Iranian regime falls.
Sort of like a Chalabi style.
They are kind of the Chalabi, the Ahmed Chalabi of Iran. They're a little creepier even than Chalabi, who just cut bad checks. But these guys really are kind of a cult on top of everything else. So they've got some extra facets to them that weren't there with Chalabi. And Chalabi, at least, because nobody really understood the political dynamics inside of Iraq that well, there was some plausible, I guess, deniability about Chalabi that, hey, maybe this guy really does speak for some movement inside Iraq. These guys, we know, like anybody who knows anything about the Mujahideen-e-Khalq and Iranian politics knows that they have no constituency in Iran, and there's no chance that they would ever be received if they were, leveraged into Tehran on the barrel of an M4 or whatever, an Abrams tank.
Well, they have also though committed acts of terror inside Iran, right?
Yes,
over the years.
They've committed acts of terror against the Iranian regime. They committed. These guys go back to the days of the Shah, and they were a resistance movement against the Shah initially, a leftist kind of Marxist resistance movement. And they committed several acts of terror in the 1970s against, in a few cases, against American targets, and they wound up on the Foreign Terrorist Organization list with the United States. But again, because of their copious spending on a lot of very prestigious and high-priced lobbyists, they got themselves off of that list in 2012.
Where are they getting the money from?
So this is an interesting question. The organization is run by, it's controlled by Mariam Rajavi. It was founded by her husband, Masoud Rajavi. He disappeared sometime around the end of the actual military, the actual war part of the Iraq War, when we defeated the Iraqi army. And
Derek, it's called occultation. Thank you very much.
Yes, I'm sorry. But he disappeared, and nobody really knows what happened to him. It's possible that the United States killed him, actually. But leadership of the group passed to his wife. And, as I say, it's sort of a cult. I mean, the group sort of, over the years, morphed into this personality cult around the Rajavis. And they have, certain amount of cachet within a very limited subset, I guess, of the Iranian exile community, and certainly within the bigger kind of anti-Iran community, which includes people like, Sheldon Adelson and other bigwig financiers. I don't want to say that that's where they get their money from. They're a very opaque organization, so nobody really knows for sure where this money is coming from. But there have been accusations about that they've done things like money laundering on behalf of some disreputable folks. That they've and I'm sure they get contributions from some of the more wealthy members of the Iranian exile community, some the wealthy members of the anti-Iran movement more broadly, and also I'm sure there's some kind of kicking up mechanism within the organization where people are expected to contribute to the cause,
and of course also sell nutrient systems to their friends and their friends' friends, multi-level, good stuff. So between that little rally and Bibi Netanyahu's PowerPoint presentation on Fox News earlier the week, there's clearly a full court press here to get President Trump, yes, President Trump, he's the president, to finally just put the bullet in the head of the Iran deal once and for all. And I was wondering what you see as sort of the future of the Iran deal, if it really does look like this is finally the end, or if it's more likely that the intense lobbying of the European heads of state that have also been massaging Trump's back in the last month is going to get them to at least kick the can down the road one more time.
Right. I think there's a chance of that. I feel like it's been the end of the line for the deal for a while now, even though there hasn't been a point where Trump said, okay, this is it, we're out, we're done. It's been sort of a death by 1,000 cuts situation where the Trump administration has done everything it can to either outright prevent Iran from reaping any of the economic benefits it's supposed to get from the deal, or it's kind of indirectly tried to do that by repeatedly injecting more and more uncertainty about the deal's future, to the point where the idea would be any company that's kind of thinking about going into business with Iran or investing in Iran in any way would say, well, we can't be sure that the United States isn't going to reimpose all of its sanctions in 3 months, so we can't really take the risk of going into business with you. So I feel like the deal in some senses is already dead, or it's maybe not. It's brain dead, but it's not totally off life support yet. But the chances, I would say, are not. I mean, they're not insubstantial that Trump is going to kick the can down the road one more time in terms of formally saying this is the end, we're done. He's got a lot of things on his plate, and he's not somebody who can really deal with even one thing on his plate at a time. But he's got North Korea to worry about, and that has a very direct relationship to what he's doing with Iran, because of course Kim Jong-un is watching to see if I negotiate a deal with this man, is he actually going to keep it? And so he's got that to worry about. There are I'm sure he's getting told by people in his national security team that the situation in Syria isn't wrapped up, that there are Iraqi elections coming up in a couple of weeks. It's a risky time in the region to go taking any major steps. And he also has a pretty much brand new foreign policy team between Mike Pompeo at the State Department and now John Bolton in the White House as national security advisor. So I do think there's a possibility that on May 12th, which is when he's supposed to issue the next round of sanctions waivers and is the next opportunity he would have to officially say terminate the deal or terminate America's participation in the deal. He may say, I'm going to not issue the waiver. He may do something where he tries to split the difference. Like, I'm not going to issue the waivers, but I'm also not going to reimpose the sanctions, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense except when you're trying to, bullshit your way out of a political problem. But he may do something like that and say, I'm going to give Pompeo more time to negotiate with the Europeans. And what he wants out of the Europeans is a supplemental deal or a package of supplemental deals that basically puts the screws to Iran on a broad range of their behavior, not just having to do with their nuclear program, and toughens some of the aspects of the nuclear deal. Now, these are all things that the Iranians have no in negotiating. They particularly don't have any interest in negotiating with a proverbial gun to their head. So this is going to be a very difficult thing to achieve, but he may see some value in putting this off for a few months and making the final, finally pulling the plug down the road. Now, he's got John Bolton in his ear. I would assume telling him to tear the deal up right now. He's got some other people who have been telling him, I think even Pompeo may be telling him to wait, not to do it right now. He's got Mac Thornberry, who's the chairman of the House Armed Services Committee, said that he thinks it would be a bad idea to tear up the nuclear deal. So he's got some people in Congress telling him that. He certainly had Emmanuel Macron and Angela Merkel tell him to stay in the deal a couple of weeks ago. I don't know that took. But then, as you say, Netanyahu gave his presentation last Monday that was a direct, I think, effort to respond to Merkel and Macron and to be the last voice in Trump's ear. Trump, who famously kind of latches on to whoever the last person to talk to him was, because he doesn't know what he's talking about. Netanyahu wanted that last voice to be his. And so I think it's more probable, if I were betting on this, I would say it's more probable that he will kill the deal or pull the U.S. out of the deal on May 12th. But there is a not insignificant chance that he puts it off.
So I kind of agree with you that there's like sort of a 65-35 chance that he continues teetering on the edge, maybe scaling that ladder of conflict a little more, but he has enough voices around him that are like, nah, you really don't want this. Do you want to have another thing you have to do, that he probably won't totally scrap it. But with Trump, I feel like there is always that 35% chance he just does it. Whatever the thing is he's not supposed to do, whatever the thing is that is the worst case scenario, he does it. If that happens, what is the political outcome in Iran? Because this deal has been, there's been a lot of this deal as a backdrop in recent Iranian elections with, not exactly getting all the economic benefits that they expected to get under Obama, but still Rouhani prevails. If this is just totally scrapped, it's humiliating for Rouhani. It validates the principalists. Do they sweep it up? Or
we're already seeing this to some extent. As I say, the deal has been getting chipped away at by Trump, and of course his rhetoric is very, kind of maximizes hostility. And hardliners in Iran have already been using this to say, look, we were right about this deal. Rouhani was wrong. You shouldn't listen to these guys. They're squishes on the United States. We can't trust them. So this is already strengthening the principalist hardline camp to some extent. Now, they used the nuclear deal and the fact that it hadn't really benefited Iranian economy as much as promised. And part of that is structural. Part of it is, it's benefited the Iranian economy at sort of a top line level, but the benefits haven't gotten down to addressing things like unemployment and weak currency, things that really affect people in the middle and working class. So, they were already using that in last year's election to sort of beat Rouhani up, and Rouhani won a surprisingly easy election last year despite that, which I think reflects the fact that there is a large constituency in Iran for a moderate to reformist political message that says, we can't continue. Like the principalists had their day and it didn't work out for Iran very well. We need to shift into something else. The more the conflict ratchets up between either Israel and Iran, or the United States and Iran, or Israel and the United States versus Iran, the better the hardline position becomes moving forward. And I think the more,
you'll have to see Rouhani, or Rouhani will have to kind of tack in a more hardline direction. He's made some very angry sounding comments about, the risk that the United States is going to take if it pulls out of the nuclear deal and all the things that Iran could do to respond. So he's already started doing this to some extent. And it's going to be another 3 years before there's another Iranian presidential election. So there's time for that to sort of get flushed out of the system. On the other hand, the last time a U.S. administration pulled away from diplomacy with Iran and decided to take a more militant tone was the Bush administration. And that's how you got Mahmoud Ahmadinejad being elected in 2005, who was the best thing that anti-Iran hardliners in Washington could have hoped for. I mean, he was the perfect boogeyman for them. But his election was partly due to the fact that the Bush administration kind of slapped Mohammad Khatami's hand away when he was trying to reach out and develop a relationship with the United States. And consequently, people in Iran, went in the more right-wing hawkish direction. So I think you'll see that shift happening in Iran. It's already happening. I think it'll pick up the pace if the nuclear deal is torn up. As to what the long-term impact of that is, it kind of depends on how quickly it works its way through the system. The supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, is old and a cancer patient. He's not going to be around very much longer. So this is kind of a critical time where if you want more engagement with Iran, if you're somebody who thinks that there should be a better relationship and, trying to ratchet down hostilities and the potential for conflict, you want reformists and moderates to be sort of in the political ascendance. And this certainly doesn't help that.
If I had to pick any singular thing that bodes very poorly for Rouhani, who's not exactly a reformist, but anyone on that much further on the continuum from the principalist, it's inflation. I don't know any exact econometric study on this, but it seems like anytime a state experiences inflation as high as they're experiencing, they immediately get a hardliner government after it. Part of that is, rat fucking. Part of that is just national humiliation. Part of that is how hard it makes people's lives in these states. But it just seems to be a one-to-one correlation.
But I do think, the inflation was high, last year, and Rouhani was still able to win. So I think there's a tension. You're right. Certainly the harder it gets for people to live their daily lives, the more likely you are to see kind of a right-wing populist figure emerge. But I still think there's a commitment by a big chunk of Iranian voters to something more moderate and open than that.
Yeah. Will we get a Iranian problem solvers caucus? That's what I want to know. That's what really
Ron Fornini.
Yes. Ron Fornini. That's what they need.
The neocons, though, they've been very open. During the last two election cycles, they're like, Elliot Abrams wrote articles in Foreign Policy that were like, yeah, I hope the hardliners win. It gives us the exact setup we want.
A lot of Iran's foreign policy and military policy is out of the hands of the elected officials. It's in the hands of the supreme leader, and it's in the hands of the Revolutionary Guard. So there may not be that much change in those facets of its behavior. As I said a couple of minutes ago, what I think is most critical is that you're looking at a new supreme leader in Iran in the very near future, I would think. Khamenei could surprise everybody and live another 10 years, but that seems unlikely. The selection of the supreme leader is managed to a certain degree, but it's also subject to political pressures from different stakeholders and from the public. So ideally, you would like that decision to be made in a climate where people are feeling optimistic, or they're feeling like, this is we want to continue to not overthrow the regime. I don't think there's an appetite, or as much of an appetite, for regime change inside Iran as you would think from listening to people like Rudy Giuliani. But that they're interested in opening the country up to the rest of the world. In particular, if that event happens, how many dies and has to be replaced during a period where people are feeling very reactionary, then you'll see another very hardline supreme leader, and nothing will change. On the other hand, if there's enough pressure to, for somebody who's a little more moderate to get that job, and I know that the goal of a lot of reformists is to actually do away with that position altogether and replace it with a council. That's probably a bridge too far. But that's the way that you would see substantive change in Iranian foreign policy, is with a change of ideology or worldview at the level of the supreme leader.
Humble suggestion for the rest of the world: get on our level, and everybody pick the biggest shithead you have and make them in charge, and just let's see what happens. I mean, what could go wrong, honestly?
Or Mr. Danny, your supreme leader. Don't you guys think it's weird that Khamenei and John McCain have a double book funeral? They're doing a double main event.
Yeah,
there's going to be trouble at that thing.
Ooh, yeah, that's gonna be tough. Big boss man's gonna show up in a big rig and drag one of the caskets down the street.
Yeah.
All right. Well, moving around in the region, there's a couple of other elections that have either happened or are taking place shortly in the Mideast, broadly defined. There was just an election in Lebanon, and it looked like Hezbollah
And the mall. Shout out to Mall.
To the surprise of a lot of people who said that they were sort of wearing out their welcome due to the losses they'd suffered fighting in Syria, did very well. So what's that going to do to the always rock solid structure of Lebanese politics now?
Well, it's the reason that Lebanese politics are so rock solid is because they're basically defined by the conflict between the Saudis and the Iranians. And the Saudis have kind of given up I don't think they've consciously given up, but they've tried in an effort to punish Lebanon, I think, and to punish the Lebanese people for, giving so much support to Hezbollah. They've kind of pulled themselves out of the race. They've taken themselves out of, any position to influence Lebanese politics. You remember they basically imprisoned Saad al-Hariri, the Lebanese prime minister, last year, and
forced him to resign, read a resignation statement that they had obviously written for him. And they closed down his family business, his construction company, which was based in Saudi Arabia and did most of its business for the Saudi monarchy. That reduced his leverage in Lebanese politics and reduced his ability to finance his future movement political party. And so, they've kind of ceded the game basically to Iran and Hezbollah, who are the other big political movers in the country. The first thing to note, I think, about this election is the reports say that turnout was very low, which reflects the fact that Lebanese politics are completely dysfunctional and everybody knows it and they're very frustrated by it. I don't think there's going to be any change at the top level. Hariri will continue to be prime minister. Michel Aoun will continue to be president. They have this deal with one another that sort of realigned Lebanese politics that they made a couple of years ago and broke a logjam where the country hadn't had a president in several years. So I think their goal was basically to get through this election, which is long overdue. It's several years overdue, and to maintain their power sharing relationship to not only for their own benefit, but to keep some stability in Lebanese politics. That's likely to be the outcome. I mean, Hezbollah isn't going to do anything to shake that up too badly. they are increasingly important as a political player, not just as a military or paramilitary faction, but as a political party. And that's, they're sort of aligned with Aoun. They're in the same coalition with Aoun. I don't see them doing anything to shake things up too badly.
Well, that brings us to a different election that's coming up. This is a real throwback to the old days, Chapo, when we were all fixated on our boy, the absolute Turkish boy, Mr. Erdogan. We haven't checked in on him in a while. He's been pretty busy solidifying his sort of quasi-dictatorial control over Turkey in the aftermath of the failed coup. But he's now actually, is this true, facing a credible presidential challenge in an upcoming election? Could that be right?
I mean, kind of. This is an election that was supposed to happen next November, but he moved it up to June, ostensibly at the urging of the head of of Devlet Bahçeli, who's the head of the ultra-nationalist MHP, which a party that's aligned with Erdogan. He did that for a couple of reasons. He moved the election up to catch the opposition off guard a little bit. He did it because there are signs that the Turkish economy is heading for a rough patch, and he wanted to have the vote before that really kicked in rather than after. And also because Turkey is still under a state of emergency that was imposed after that failed coup. I mean, a coup attempt that lasted like 10 hours 2 years ago has generated a 2-year-long state of emergency under which Erdogan pretty much gets to do whatever he wants, including monopolizing media and preventing, if he wants to, preventing other parties from campaigning, locking their leaders, in some cases, in jail on spurious charges that they've got connections to outlawed groups like the PKK. So he's got a lot of leeway to do whatever the hell he wants, basically, to make sure that he wins this election. Now, that said, the candidate who's most likely to take him to a runoff is a woman named Meral Akşener, who used to be in MHP. She's a very hardline right-wing nationalist, but she's very opposed to Erdogan, and she's opposed to all the constitutional changes that he's made and to his kind of accumulation of power in the authoritarian way that he's done that. She broke off from MHP and founded her own party, which is called the EE Party, or the Good Party. That's the translation. It's the Good Party.
Damn. How can you not vote for that?
And so she's running. Her party is running. They actually got a group of parliamentarians, legislators from the main opposition party, the Republican People's Party, or CHP, to switch over to the Good Party as a tactical thing, so that the Good Party could qualify for the election, so that it was big enough, had a large enough presence in Parliament to qualify for the election. And she's now running along with a candidate from the CHP, and there are a couple of other smaller candidates. The pro-Kurdish party, the HDP, has nominated their former leader. His name is Selahattin Demirtas. He's in jail. He's one of the people that Erdogan has locked up on suspicion of being Kurdish, basically. So it's not clear how he can run. But the idea is for all of these guys to dilute the vote enough that they can deny AKP a parliamentary majority, or this AKP-MHP alliance, that they can deny it a parliamentary majority, and that they can take Erdogan down below 50% of the vote and get him into a runoff. The feeling then being, in a 1-to-1 matchup, all the opposition can unite behind this one candidate who's running against Erdogan, and they have a chance of defeating him. That said, Akşener carries a lot of baggage with her. She's the most likely, according to polling, to come in second in the first round of the election, which means she's most likely to take him to a runoff. But as I said, she's a hardline Turkish nationalist. She was interior minister at one point, and she's got a lot of beef with the Kurds from her time as interior minister. And so, and any candidate who stands any chance of beating Erdogan in a runoff has to get basically everybody, like it has to be all hands on deck from every opposition group. They all have to just kind of hold their nose and say, we hate Erdogan more than we hate this other person, so we're going to vote for this other person. And it's unclear that Kurdish voters are going to be able to stomach voting for her. Now, Erdogan is certainly no friend to the Kurds either, so they may be able to do that. But for the Kurds in particular, it may be, there's just no difference between these people. Why should I vote for one over the other? I think the chances are actually pretty good that Erdogan will wind up in a runoff, which is embarrassing for him or will be embarrassing for him. I don't think the chances are at all good that he'll lose that runoff.
Woo! I was worried there for a minute. I wouldn't want to lose my boy. So one of the things that he's been doing has been solidifying the buffer zone in northern Syria, right, after taking Afrin from the Kurds.
Right, and moving, like displacing Kurds and moving other displaced Syrians in to kind of change the demography of Afrin.
Yeah, because so there was, of course, the collective breath holding when the U.S. launched their strikes into Syria after the purported chemical weapon attack. To the surprise, I guess, of some, that led to basically no change in the actual topography of the conflict. And I was just wondering if you had any way of just laying out where things stand in Syria right now, and if there is any likely dam breaking moment in what direction it might go.
Yeah, I mean, the situation now is Bashar al-Assad seems to be consolidating his position right now, so things are actually a little bit quiet. He's trying to clear out pockets that are still controlled by rebels, and in at least one case by ISIS, that are in the vicinity of Damascus and Homs and some of the larger cities of Western Syria. And he's been doing that pretty systematically. They go in and he and the Russians bomb, and then they threaten a ground invasion, and they wind up getting basically the same thing they did in Eastern Ghouta, where they get the rebels to agree to evacuate and be taken someplace else. Generally, it's either Idlib province or these areas to the north of that are now controlled by Turkey, in exchange for, they get free passage. They get to, leave, and they have to give up their heavy weapons, but they get to stay alive, basically. And he's been doing that in Yarmouk. He's done that in the Kalamun area, which is north of Damascus. The situation in Yarmouk, which is a little bit south of Damascus, is more complicated because ISIS actually controls the Yarmouk refugee camp, or most of it, the Palestinian refugee camp there. And they don't really have any place to go, basically. I mean, there's nothing to negotiate with them on, because there's really no place for them. Nobody wants them anyplace else. They could go east to some areas that are still nominally under ISIS's control, but that's, basically sending them to be killed, which is, they're obviously not interested in doing that. He's now cleared out a pocket of that was under Al Qaeda or Tahrir Sham's control near Homs, and everything's kind of building to the point where all the rebels that are left are going to be in two pockets. They're going to be in the very southwestern part of Syria, and they're going to be in Idlib province. And at that point, it's hard to imagine that Assad is just going to say, okay, you can have those parts of Syria. I don't care. So he's probably going to try to move on one of them. And I think that's where the dam will break. And if he goes to the south, The dam will break because this is the part of Syria that abuts, runs right into the Golan and then from there into Israel. And so you're going to see Israel get even more involved than it already is. If he tries to go for Idlib next, that dam is going to be a massive humanitarian catastrophe because there are 2 million people estimated to be in that province at this point. Most of them, or maybe half of them, displaced from other parts of Syria, and they're all crammed into this one province and basically in a kill box. And there's going to be a lot of pressure on Turkey, for example, which is supposed to be assuming responsibility for maintaining a ceasefire in Idlib, but has obviously spent more time fighting the Kurds in Syria than it has anything else. There's going to be pressure on them to respond to that in some way and try to protect the civilians there. I don't know that they'll get involved. They might just take a pass. But it's going to be a very bad situation if and when Assad moves on Idlib. It's going to cause a lot more displacement all of a sudden. It's going to get a lot of people killed, and that's the next. That would be the next thing to look out for.
Well, as predicted, it's great news all over the world.
Everything's going very well.
I see the problems. I see them on the verge of being fixed.
You know what? I really do, too. I think it's going to be good. Especially Syria. I feel like you're talking about increased Israeli involvement. I think that could only be good.
When has that ever made a bad situation worse? I don't know.
They finally perfected their journalist-seeking missile that they're going to be able to deploy there as they have in Gaza. I'm really looking forward to how that works out. Just a lot of really smart, compassionate people working for everyone's benefit.
You got Jared Kushner. You got Mike Pompeo. You got John Bolton. And you got all of Israel, the 7,000 people in Israel who all invented SodaStream together. And they're standing up and saying, we do not like it when people get killed.
Yeah.
Well, and that's not, I mean, I don't want to add to the plate here, but the embassy moving to Jerusalem is going to happen soon, and that's going to cause another shitstorm. So we have that to look forward to.
Ooh, do they have it all? Have they built it? Is it set up?
No, they're putting it temporarily in. There was already a U.S. consulate in Jerusalem that was built with an eye toward functioning as an embassy someday, because it's always been U.S. policy that we would eventually, in some fashion, presumably after negotiating a peace deal between the Israelis and the Palestinians that gave East Jerusalem to the Palestinians, that we would eventually move the embassy to Jerusalem. And it's, in fact, U.S. law that presidents are supposed to move the embassy to Jerusalem, but they have the right to waive it, and all past presidents have sensibly waived it. Trump has not, obviously. So they have the building. They have a building that they can temporarily turn into an embassy while they prepare a more permanent site, and that's supposed to happen sometime this summer, I think.
Oh yeah, maybe if we give our kid the PS4, they'll study harder. Not just lay it away as an incentive. Give them something to relax with. Just a thought, maybe the one thing that prevents the disaster that comes from moving the embassy is Jared's and Trump's ability in fucking up building creation and buildings. And they just build just an awful piece of shit with like a styrofoam foundation with 6-foot ceilings. They don't pay the contractors. They underbid on everything. And, more proof that Trump is secretly anti-imperialist.
Yep.
Because he built an embassy so terrible, it destroys Israeli and American relations.
Yeah. He brings in 500 illegal Polish workers to build it out of Legos.
Yeah, Bibi going in while on work release to open the embassy. And he's like, I want to honor this great day. I would like to order a cocktail in the Trump embassy in Jerusalem. And he gets a wine glass filled with gin and grapes. And he's like, this is an outrage.
Look,
and because Bibi finally criticized him, Trump is like, we're done, okay? No more Israel.
Okay, look. Yes, it's largely composed of popsicle sticks. Most of the grouting is actually Elmer's glue. It sways visibly back and forth every time there's a little bit of wind, but it's got the loosest slots of any embassy in the entire world, and you can't take that away from it.
I'm
Jared,
just
Jared
imagining.
is accidentally going to sell the old embassy to MEK.
I'm imagining Bibi criticizing him and Trump coming out as a 12er Shia the next day.
Trump is like, Edward Said is a guy who's being recognized more and more, who's doing a terrific job.
I think there's at least a 5% chance that he'll start talking about the Juche ideology after his meeting with Kim Jong-un. So,
Yeah, so is he going to get the Nobel Peace Prize for that shit? Because that'd be really
no
funny.
way.
My vote
I
counts
think
for anything.
Moon and Kim might get it together, but there's no way they're going to give it to Trump.
No, I agree. I mean, I've seen people say, well, you know, there's going to be so much pressure. Like, these are all Scandinavian academics and diplomats. They have there's nothing you can pressure them on. And they love owning American teacots more than anything. When they gave it to Jimmy Carter and Al Gore and fucking Obama, like, they love fucking with American chuds. There's no way in hell they would give it to Trump. But that would be the funniest thing to ever happen. I mean, Tom Lehrer said that irony died when Henry Kissinger got the Nobel Peace Prize, but at least he was someone's idea of a diplomat, of a statesman.
Imagine the fucking that award next to like the Golden Globe for The Apprentice. My two most prestigious awards.
They're phenomenal, folks. He gets
They could give him the prize for literature for Art of the Deal.
They get like iron casts of copies of the prize, and he just puts them in every one of his shitty fucking properties. And he wears it around his neck at all times. I could see him doing that for sure on a big red ribbon, just swaying back and forth and banging into microphones.
Oh my God.
You can't hear him talking because it's clanging around.
I'm not taking it off. I earned it.
I mean, obviously, the talk about Trump being responsible for this, as many people have pointed out, you're really overlooking one of the huge key factors, which is that South Korea had a sort of reactionary regime that was hostile to any kind of negotiations with North Korea, and then it was brought down by mass protests when it turns out that the president was a weirdo who was in the thrall of a cult leader.
Right.
Oh
right.
my God. How
was a
awesome
very
is
weird
that?
story.
I mean, we can't really laugh at it because it's like, Trump's going to get like an astrology app on his phone and be like, Taurus is rising, no good.
Yeah, well, no, but I mean,
like, it can happen to any of our stupid countries, but it's so funny.
No, it's so. I mean, yes, it's very funny, but I mean, Trump is basically in the same boat, except it's Gary Busey or something. It's basically anyone who's been on television who said something nice to him, and he's as much in their thrall as this person was to the shadowy cult leader that she inherited from her father. Yeah, Lou Dobbs. Yes,
man, I hate it when my dad's cult leader is just hanging around the attic of my parents' house when I'm cleaning it out, and I'm like, I guess I have to take this.
Yeah,
none of my friends will take her.
Trump's cult leader is Brian fucking Kilmeade. I mean, just absorb the reality of that. Jesus fucking Christ. But so, like, the fact that they got him out and they have Moon in there, who is sort of really is the gold standard for what you would want out of a sort of a liberal statesman, and really made efforts towards taking serious moves in the direction of rapprochement. But I mean, what do you think? You don't give Trump credit, obviously, because that would imply that he has some sort of positive goal in mind for anything he ever does or says. But did this happen in part because he is an unstable maniac and he just scared them into just wanting to have him at least stop threatening in public to press a big red button on his desk all the time?
I mean, it's impossible to say what motivated Kim to agree to meet with Donald Trump. It's entirely possible, I guess, that there's some element of this that's Trump is so unpredictable. What if he really goes nuts, and we have to try to fend this off? On the other hand, I think there's a lot of economic pressure on Pyongyang that's been gradually ratcheted up since long before Donald Trump became president, that Kim would like to alleviate. Moon's diplomacy has been a huge factor, I think. The Olympics, which were just kind of happened to coincide with this moment where Moon became president, and Kim was feeling a little, more generous than perhaps he usually is. But the Olympics were a huge opening for something to break, to allow there to be some development. And I don't think you can discount the idea that Kim and leaders all over the world at this point are looking at Donald Trump and thinking, yeah, man, 10 minutes in a room with that guy and I could convince him to do fucking anything I wanted. I think that may be a factor too. And so, there's a whole lot of things going on. And the question of whether Kim really feels threatened or, has felt threatened by Trump, I don't think you can ever really know that, but you'll get some hint of it based on what he comes to the table with. He's said repeatedly now through many channels that he is committed to denuclearization, but denuclearization is a word that doesn't necessarily mean anything, really. It's got to be defined by the negotiators, and in this case, Kim and Trump, plus the people underneath them. And it's not clear that what Kim means by denuclearization is what the United States means, which the United States basically means disarmament. North Korea has to pack up its nuclear program and destroy it. It's not clear that that's what Kim means when he talks about denuclearization. And so I think what he comes to the table with and how many concessions he's prepared to make to the United States will sort of start to answer the question of his motivations, whether he's, was just scared straight and is ready to give up the farm, or if he feels like he's in the more advantageous position now and can, wring some serious concessions out of Trump.
Well, I don't know why he wouldn't feel comfortable just disarming completely when he's got America's national security advisor saying that the model to pursue in North Korea is the Libyan one.
Libya, I know.
Which, that if you're Kim Jong-un, that sounds good.
Holy shit, yeah, the Libyan model. Okay.
Or if you're following the Iran thing and it's like, oh yeah, making a deal with America, great move.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing that is the most inexplicable to me. Trump apparently thinks that if as he's kind of broken the Iran deal and threatened to get rid of it, that this makes him look tough. And so Kim, is going to go into negotiations thinking, man, this guy's a tough. He's president deals. I can't get one over on him like the Iranians did with Obama. But what it tells any rational person who watches this is there's no deal that you can make with the United States that isn't subject to the next reality show doofus that these idiots elect as president.
He literally thinks in the future, people making deals with America, they'll know that there's always a risk of a genius getting elected.
Well, that's what's so frustrating is that really, I mean, if the world was rationally organized and people and governments could sort of come to the table and sort of on an equal playing field and try to reach agreements that were mutually beneficial, the thing to do for all of these countries, really, basically every country other than us, would be to band together in an anti-American coalition and make us give up our nuclear weapons and sanction us and just be like, you can't be the guys with the nukes anymore.
It would be the end of training day.
Yeah. It's like you can't do it anymore. This has gone on far enough. It was one thing when you had a guy like Nixon going around saying, oh, well, the madman theory. It's another thing to have an actual syphilitic maniac in charge. And like if there was any kind of reasonable global community, if that meant anything, they would put their differences aside the way Reagan used to say that the world would put its differences aside in the face of an alien invasion and fucking take the gun out of our hands. But instead, I think you're right in that they all look at Trump. Every world leader looks at Trump and thinks, if I get in a room with him, he's mine. So better to deal with him and try to get a good agreement for your country than just try to fucking stop this madness.
Yeah, I mean, I think, especially for people like the more authoritarian-minded leaders, people like him, like Vladimir Putin, like Xi Jinping, like Viktor Orban in Hungary, they feel like Trump is simpatico with them, and he is. I mean, it's not that they feel that way. He's made it very clear that he is. And then you couple that with the fact that he's an idiot, and they all, feel like they can get in a room with him. And it's the people like Macron who on one hand is, almost as authoritarian minded as Trump, but comes at it from a much different place, or the hapless leaders of Mexico and Canada, for example. Those guys are the ones who are at a loss because Trump, has no patience for them, apparently.
No, yeah, you're right. There's just too much on the table. We're just a big happy sow, and we'll just take all your shit. And people have stuff to give, and we want to take it, and they'll give it to us. So that's fun. We're just a big coddled baby, and we're always gonna get the sweets. They're always gonna go to McDonald's and give us our sweets and treats because we've been very good boys.
Would you say that America is willful, unmoored, maybe presided over by a dragon of chaos? You say that maybe we, as an empire, vast spanning empire, greedy, violent empire, we could use 12 rules?
We could use a few. We could start by cleaning our room.
Yes.
By bringing back the EPA. How about that? Well, I think that's all we have for today, Derek. Thank you very much for this very
uplifting,
exciting, and
I'm always happy to bring a positive message.
Right.
To the show.
Everything is smooth sailing from here on out, I think.
Positive in 2018. We've stuck with that promise, and this is one of the most positive episodes you'll ever hear.
Yep. Everything's going to be okay everywhere all the time.
If you're going into work, you're going into school tomorrow, you're a childless stay-at-home dad who's also not married. Many of our listeners are. Face it with a smile. And we just helped you. You're welcome.
Well, thank you, Derek, for coming in. It's been very nice.
Sure, thanks, guys.
Folks, check out Derek's Patreon. You also have a podcast, don't you,
Yes.
Derek?
Yes, for $3 a month and up.
Check that
usually
out.
2
It's
a week
excellent.
if I can manage it.
Check that out. Thank you very much, Derek Davison.
Yeah. We will include links to Derek's Patreon and his blog, which is also excellent, in the episode description. Everyone, will be back soon.
We will break him. He'll be back
gonna,
humbled.
Just updates from Chief Negotiator Chris. We are tentatively offering Will $1.30 per episode.
And a lunch voucher.
Ooh.
Yes.
Wow.
Arby's or worse. Nothing else.
Bathroom
No
breaks?
muscle.
Does he get bathroom breaks?
Let's not go crazy here.
All right. Okay. All right.
What is this, Venezuela?
I don't want to give anybody, any
Yeah,
ideas.
yeah. Forget about that.
All right. Till next week. The middle of next week.
Yes.
Hasta la pronto.
Bye-bye.
Hasta la pronto.
Bye-bye.
Hasta la pronto.
Bye-bye.
Hasta la pronto.
Bye-bye.
Hasta la pronto.
Bye-bye.